Yeah, so what is it like to go to an inauguration? I only went to one inauguration, so I can only tell you about that one. But I went to a really good one because Beyonce sang. Yep, I mean, how many ones did Beyonce sing at, right? That was the best. And her earrings were amazing, amazing. And it was so cold, and she sang so good. And I was like, oh my gosh, because it was so cold. But yeah, I was invited to the 2013 Obama inauguration and was able to get several tickets for myself, my son's father, my ex partner at the time, and then also for my grandmother. And so we kind of rolled her out there. She was in a wheelchair, and we took my grandma to DC, where there was some family living, so it was a little easier for us to get around. And we took her into the inauguration. And luckily, my grandmother, she's a former teacher, former vice principal, and home economics teacher, who also received her master's in education. So she's a little particular. Very like, we're about to leave at this time and no later. We will leave. We will not leave later. You know what I mean? So we had to leave. It was like, sun's not even out. And we're on the road, you know. And of course, she was right, of course, because nobody was there. We got there and then people were setting up the signs like, wow, you guys are early. And I'm like, my grandma's like, see? And I'm like, yep, that's right, Grandma Claire, you're right again. 'Cause it was a lot easier to get through everything with a wheelchair being there at like 6 a.m. And so we got really early to the reflecting pool, which is where our station was because we had a disabled elder. So we were right on the reflecting pool, which is, you know, a really historic area and just kind of like this place where the water is, and you know, Forrest Gump. I don't know if you've seen that kind of stuff, but it's a big pool in Washington D.C. And then, you know, we get to see, you know, Congress come in, and we see everybody come in to get ready to watch, you know, President Obama, you know, take his next pledge to become president again. And it was really special because there were so many black people there that, and most of them were in fur coats. I'm not sure if they're all real, but they were all in fur coats. And I was just like, this is amazing. This is like progress. In the sense that there are more black people engaged in politics, more people who care, more people who feel seen. And I do think that that's a really good testimony and strength to any black person who's running in politics, that it's a big thing for our people. Like, we don't always have that. You know, like growing up, you know, every year, I would just be like hitting my head against the wall, like, that's another white president. Like, what's going on with these people? The whole, you know, liberty for all. I just LOL. You know, it was so dissonant, right? So different. So it was really great to see, you know, the inauguration, but it was also really logistically difficult. So, in the sense of being with a wheelchair user, getting around, managing this thing, and it, you know, it was like, okay, we're going to go to the inauguration, take grandma. Then we took grandma back home, dropped her off, unwrapped her because grandma is old school. So grandma had wrapped her feet in saran wrap with some oil or something. I guess it keeps in the heat when you're really cold. Saran wrap your skin, and then you put that in a sock, and then you put that in a boot. Swears by it, grandma does. So, you know, she got unwrapped. She was sitting in front of a fire, left her, and then we headed back out to inaugural ball. And so I had been invited to a couple inaugural balls, but I decided to only go to one inaugural ball. Might have gone to, I should have probably gone to more, but you know, I don't know. Somebody says inaugural ball, I'm thinking, me, balls. It's not the type of ball I'm used to. I don't know. It's not who I go to. It's not me. I don't know. So, but I did go because I was like, whatever, let's be a princess. So I got myself a big old princess dress, and I went and sat on the couch because I was exhausted from the whole walking, rolling grandma earlier in the day, back and forth for inauguration, and then coming to this dancing. It did not feel like dancing, but did feel like sitting and watching and meeting a lot of, you know, high society lesbians. Most who want to discuss soccer practice. So, you know, it's like, okay. You know, but it was really interesting to be in that type of environment. What, years after, you know, being an HRC intern, and being on a campaign and being like a kid, and now I'm an adult. But it was also kind of fraught with circumstances of just really facing biphobia with having a masculine or male partner, of people being like very specific, like, oh yeah, you're not queer, okay, well, all right, whatever. I was like, I know I'm better at it than you, but whatever. It's just like an insult. You want to turn with an insult, but should you? I don't know. And just being in that space was very cognizant of that. So it kind of was like, whatever, go find all the celebrities, see what's up. Some people were there. Jessica Chastain was there with beautiful red hair as usual, and a really lovely black velvet gown. Somebody should find a picture of her at the inaugural ball because that was gorgeous. She went with some of her best gays, so I think she was kind of off the clock, but she was fantastic. Who else was there? A lot of the Grey's Anatomy cast was there. Not everybody, but some. And so they were all in kind of a dais listening to Cyndi Lauper and other people, traditional usual suspects that came out for the LGBT, ball of celebrating our next president. And then, Kristen Sinema pops up like, hey, Faith. And I'm like, hi, Senator. Or I think at that point it was Congressman Sinema because this is 13, right? And so I'm like, oh yeah, we had, sent some paperwork over and like done some like more for Sinema than any other candidate that we would usually, because with BiNet USA being a bi organization, we usually support bi candidates, and especially with dealing with biphobia, bi media issues, making sure they understand like, this is really common. There's lots of ways people who manage this, and Sinema was very open about her biness pretty early on and was not interested in being closeted, which I found to be extremely admirable. So I was like, oh, nice to see you. But then she was like, no, we know each other. And I was like, ah. So still don't know how I know Kristen Sinema. If you know how I know Kristen Sinema, I want to hear from you. Because how? I don't know. I mean, sometimes I try to erase entire chunks of my brain, if that makes sense. Like, things are so upsetting. Like, there was this one LGBT conference that was after Prop 8 in Los Angeles in January of 2009. And it was upsetting. And there was white people, and they had they hosted this African-American LGBT session, but then we got there and it was a trick. It was like, it's a trap. And like, the trap was they were like, we're going to surround you as white people and yell at you while you're sitting there talking. And I was like, what? No way. And they're like, yeah, no, we're going to yell at you. I was like, haha, no, you're not. And so like, we literally like all bounced and like, fisted and like walked out and like went to go get some food, like, we'll just have our meeting outside, not even be part of this conference, because we are all black LGBT who came from other parts of the state or the country, So I kind of wonder if she was there at that thing, because I'm like, maybe I erased you from that whole crowd of like, folks. But I'm sure it'll come to me eventually. Unfortunately, there are so many people and so many stories and so many things that have happened that people can not so much disappear as much as kind of fold into another story, oftentimes another Kristen, if that makes sense. Like, there's 17 of them. There's Kirsten, but it was one of those things that really was nice to see her at the ball and see her so cared for by the elite gays, and made me think, oh, okay, well, things might be changing a bit, because she was somebody who you could see very much being a player and somebody who could do well for some time. So I think that as time goes by, I hope people see the consistency of excellence there, right? No matter how you might vote, are you impressed that someone is able to deliver a bill repeatedly that you applauded? Or you could ignore that success. But, I do think it's happening, and it's happening with people who have different opinions. And I think that's really cool. And if it kept on happening more, a lot of people might feel like we have a really bright future ahead of us that at least we can figure out together.